Well, it's no secret a lot of sectors of our economy were hit hard, especially in the height of the pandemic. And among the hardest hit is our vibrant arts and culture community, not just in this area, but of course, all across Washington state. And there's some money coming in to help with that because some other money has dried up. And so joining us here at Northwest News Radio to talk about that is Michael Greer. He is the president and CEO of ArtsFund. Michael, thank you for joining us. First thing I want to ask you is, can you tell us a little bit about what you're getting from the Paul G. Allen Family Foundation?
Absolutely. Brian, thank you so much for having me. Arts Fund will be partnering with the Paul G. Allen Family Foundation on a program that we are calling the Community Access Grant, and it is a private and nonprofit partnership that will see a $10 million investment in our community by investing in arts and culture sectors across the state of Washington.
And you just confirmed the next thing I was going to ask you. It's not just local, it is the entire state of Washington, correct?
Absolutely, Ryan. Our goal is to reach arts and cultural organizations across the entire state where that need is.
Okay, so let's back it up because one of the things in my reading and just following this throughout the course of the pandemic that I have noticed is concern about the available arts in all forms sort of shrinking down, the industry sort of losing some ground and losing some people and some places to go because of the pandemic. At this point, how would you gauge where we are with being able to salvage as much of it as we can?
It's a great question, Ryan, but I don't know if salvage is the right term. We learned in our COVID cultural impact study that we released at the beginning of this year, 2022, that there were significant reductions in earned revenue and in employment. But the key to where we're going with the community accelerator grant is that we want to support these organizations as they build back for the future. We know that they are providing jobs, they are providing impacts that lead to positive social impact, including behavioral health and a better educational attainment for our children. And we want to support them as they move back into these spaces and keep putting their impact back in the community. So even though they took a loss during COVID, and we all know that, they have continued to be in their communities and continuing to put impact and providing impact to those communities when it was needed the most. And we're here to support that through this program.
Yeah, I would guess a lot of that is people who love it just almost forcing it to happen, like sheer force of will. We're not going to let this go. We're going to keep it alive, right?
Absolutely. And also, we look at arts and culture as both an economic and a social tool for better outcomes in our communities. So apart from the sheer will, we also know that the public sector, the private sector, the nonprofit sector, we all have a vested interest in making sure that this tool is healthy and able to be used to promote those those positive social outcomes within our communities.
So the other thing I want to make sure we talk about is the need for the money, because early on in the pandemic, there were some other outside supports, and that's all gone. So can you talk about what was there and now that it's gone, what's missing?
Absolutely. Throughout the pandemic, we saw specifically public sector support really allow the organizations within our network to continue hiring people and to continue putting impact into their community. As that level of public support starts to retreat, and we all know that costs, not just in arts and culture, but across the board, costs are going up for all industries. So we've got public sector support retreating, we've got costs that are rising, and we also know that now the need for that impact in these communities is as great as it has ever been. And so, again, the program that we're working with here is an attempt to solve for that in a small way. 10 million seems like a large amount, but we know that the losses were much, much greater over the past several years. And so we also, in addition to actually bringing this money to communities, we're also hoping to inspire others that can, do this type of work and meet us in these communities with their dollars as well.
So let's talk about that a little more, because you just actually hit on something I should have thought of and didn't, and that's, the inflationary impact. It's sort of like a 1-2 punch. First it was the pandemic, now these places and venues and people working in the arts and culture community are getting hit with that. I mean, I honestly, I don't know sometimes how they're able to keep their heads above water, but how are they doing it?
Well, I mean, they're doing it because there is a desire for these organizations and this impact to exist within their community, and that's why all services are available in the community, because there's a desire for them to exist. And so people know that having access to arts and culture within their community is a good thing for them, for their children, and for their community as a whole. And so the services exist because there is a need for those services. But you are absolutely correct when you say it is a 1-2 and maybe a 3-4 punch out there somewhere. In that, the cost of doing business has increased. There is the issue of labor and the lack of labor and the difficulty, the great resignation, and all those other things that we're hearing about in other sectors are evident in the arts and culture sector as well. And so that's, again, why programs like the Community Accelerator Grant are necessary. And not just this grant, but much more support like this is necessary in our communities. And I'm going to add one more thing in here, Ryan, is that the dollars from the Community Accelerator Grant are unrestricted. And that is very important to note, is that we feel that these organizations do not need any strings attached to this funding. And that is because they know best how to get the most impact of a dollar in their community. And so it's very important for us to recognize that and make sure that the dollars are out there and being able to be used for what these organizations know it needs to be used for.
Yeah, because I was actually thinking about that before we got together here. Things like the Paycheck Protection Program were specific to keep people getting paid, and other grants were, had specific earmarks. But that unrestricted funding, I would imagine, if one place needs to use it to help pay its workers, it can do that. If a theater building sets needs paint, they can use it for that. I mean, it can just, anything they need, it can go for it, right?
Absolutely. And we understand that the state of Washington is incredibly diverse in its populations and its communities, and the needs of those communities are also going to be diverse. So we are entrusting these dollars to the folks that are in these communities in order to have the most impact in the places that they know best.
So let's talk about that too. I know it's pretty much up for grabs for anybody within the arts and culture communities across Washington, but are there any that we're hoping to specifically target that might have greater needs?
Well, we know, again, this is information that we learned from our COVID cultural impact study, that Black, Indigenous, people of color, people with disabilities, the LGBTQ plus community, these organizations, or organizations that were led by these populations or were primarily serving these organizations, saw an outsized impact of COVID. And so we know that as they recover and are trying to retool for the future, they are going to need even more support to really come back to where they were before and to achieve greater impact within the communities that they're trying to serve.
So I might be jumping the gun just a little bit, because I know it's really not going to start for another couple of months, but what do some of these groups and organizations need to do if they want to get their hands on some of this money and put it to work?
They need to go to www.artsfund.org/accelerator, and they need to enter their information, and they will be notified whenever there's any other information that's coming out. They don't have to do that in order to be part of the program, but that is the best way to stay current on where we are with the application, with the community advisory panel, and with all the steps that will lead towards the application opening in January of 2023.
That's right. And I am getting ahead of myself, because you're still putting together the advisory panel and not even again, a couple of months away from even starting to take applications, right?
Absolutely. Applications are scheduled to open in January of 2023, and there will be much more information about including information sessions, video sessions starting in December of 2023.
Okay, so then I think the one other thing that we need to talk about is beyond the Allen Foundation. What can folks like me or my neighbors who love different types of the arts or cultural outlets around here, what can we do to help continue to support this community?
Ryan, you can go to a show, you can go to a museum, you can you can create your own art, you can engage with arts and culture in whatever way is best for you, and you can always give. If you're in a position where you can give to a local organization that means something to you and is having impact in your community. And the last thing that I will say, it costs absolutely nothing. You can contact decision makers in your community and let them know that this is important, whether those are public officials, whether those are private decision makers, whoever that is. Call them, send them an email, write them a letter, let them know that there is value to having arts and culture in your community and that they need to be supporting it in the same way that we're seeing the Paul G. Allen Family Foundation and ArtsFund support it.
All right, excellent. Michael Greer, President and CEO of ArtsFund. Michael, thanks for that. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Ryan.